Hey, what's up, family? Welcome to Think Tank Thursday Live, first edition. So you guys are on the front end of what I said in the video that I introduced this with. And we always talk about connection and connectivity and community. And we wanted to provide a live platform in where one, you can see me uncut, real, just as I am, and take you through a theme of the month. And the theme of the month this month has been how to be a professional, what it means to be pro. And when you think about that, the common conception is pro athletes, whether it's basketball, football, or like whatever the sport, or a professional singer. We think about things in arts and sports, but being professional goes far beyond things that are just monetized for viewing and watching. And I would argue that I was a professional before I became a professional football player, and I have been a professional since I have retired. And there are a lot of things that go into that. One thing in particular is what we've been posting on the grit and determination and not letting failure be a setback. A lot of times, I have a science background, and I'll get into my story a little bit, but I have a science background, and experimentation is almost synonymous to failures. I referenced WD-40 in one of the posts, and it literally took them from they had a government contract to lubricate, silos for missiles, I believe. And it took them 40 attempts to get the formula right so that it was effective enough to actually be this lubricant that is now found in almost every household. I don't even know if it's sold internationally, but probably every household around the world. So if it takes landing a government contract, going through 40 iterations of this product that you're trying to develop as chemists and engineers to get this final product, if it takes 40 brilliant minds in chemistry to get it right, how many attempts do you think it would take for us to get it right as people who may not be scientists, people who feel like we fail daily? And so I'm going to dive a little bit into my story to see really how that fleshed out and why I can make the statement that I was a professional before I played in the NFL. Obviously, I was a professional when I was in the NFL, and how I maintained this air of professionalism in retirement. So post my playing career. And to give legs to it, I guess I will have to start, when I was in high school. Actually, I'll start from when I was a kid. The first time I played football, I was 7 years old. It was literally the first organized sport that I played. And if you ever heard me talk at a conference or in a boardroom, I tell the story a lot because the genesis of being a professional is visualizing yourself in that profession, whatever it is, whatever it is. And so for me, it began, like I said, my first year playing organized football, and my mom had bought me these cleats, and the box that they came in, the box it wasn't like so fancy and glossed like most shoe boxes are these days. The box was actually just this, it looked like it could have been a UPS box, but it was a pair of Nike cleats. And it was just this brown, like regular box. And when I wore the cleats, so actually I took the cleats out of the box, but I had a Sharpie. And believe it or not, I knew that I wanted to be a professional from that moment, 7 years old. So what I did was I began practicing my autograph on this shoe box. The first cleats my mother ever bought me. I began practicing my autograph, and I don't know how many iterations I had gone through, but the box was covered with my autograph, me practicing my autograph. And to this day, what I perfected as a 7-year-old is what I use now to actually sign my autographs. And I mean, it changes with the number and the team, obviously, but my name remains the same. And so I say that to say, I knew that I had a vision of being professional, and it began with me practicing my autograph on a shoebox on my first pair of cleats when I was 7 years old, just sitting in my room. Now, fast forward to high school, I realized that I was a pretty good athlete, just going through, Pop Warner, middle school, high school, and I felt like I had a chance to play college football. And again, some of you may have heard this story, but I remember my junior year, I was getting letters in the mail, snail mail, no emails. This is some old school. and I was getting letters in the mail, and I would get called to the office to go pick up the mail because it had to go through the school. They didn't have my address. And so every so often I would get a call, hey, Trey, come to the office, you have mail, over the intercom in the classroom. I would go up, get my mail, bring it back, and people would, hey, who's it from? What school is that? What school is this? I didn't have a huddle account like most kids have, most athletes or high school athletes have these days. So I would, show them everything, like, this is from Georgia, this is from Auburn, this is from Harvard, this is from Stanford, this is from Army, this is from Navy. Just some of the schools that I was getting letters from. But the school that I knew that I wanted to go to was University of Georgia. And as a high school athlete, we went on these things called unofficial visits. You can go on official visits and you could go on unofficial visits. On official visits, you had a certain amount that you can use, and you would usually go with your parents, and it was with it would usually involve a campus tour and things like that. But on this particular non-official visit, I could call my recruiting coach and say, Coach, I want to come to this game, and I would get 4 free tickets, like to any game, any sporting event. And so this was in football season, and I called Coach Johnson, who was my recruiting coach. He was the tight end coach at the time at the University of Georgia. And I said, hey, Coach, I want tickets to, I think it was Auburn or the Georgia Tech game. And his response was, Trey, I'm glad you called. And that was the first red flag, because I know I called him only when I wanted something. So when you're calling asking, or when you're calling begging, and the person says, I'm glad you called, automatic red flag immediately. And so he says, I'm glad you called because I wanted to let you know that we won't be offering you a scholarship. Now, in my mind, I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I just knew that I was going to go D1. I knew I wanted to play in the SEC because that, obviously, I know who just won the national championship, but the SEC is still the best conference in all of college athletics. I don't care who, disputes it. It is what it is. SEC all day. But anyway, I digress. He says, we're not going to be able to extend a scholarship offer to you because we want to give scholarships to athletes who are a little bit more attractive size-wise. Now, I'm not the biggest guy. I mean, you can look at that and tell people who know me, people who see me. I've never been that big. I've always been called too small, not big enough, not fast enough, not strong enough. But it really hurt. But the reason that I called him was because I wanted to get these tickets. And so I needed to stay on task. And so even though I wasn't getting the scholarship, I had to make sure that I could still secure these tickets, because I had 3 other guys who were dependent on me, and I couldn't just ruin my reputation. So he says, yeah, you get the tickets, you go to will call, and you get them. But the reason behind that is a lot of you know my story. And even though I didn't get a scholarship, so it never happened. It never happened. I never got a scholarship before I got to college. But that was a major setback. A decision that I could have made in that moment is internalizing I'm not good enough and just give up on my dream. But I carried myself in a way, how to be a pro, right? I carried myself in a way for the remainder of my high school to make sure I put out great film, to make sure I was practicing my craft, right? Now I wasn't going to be on scholarship. I had to get I had to get into school on my academic merit. So I had to make sure that I was getting the best grades possible to make me the best applicant possible, because I was going to make it. I was going to play in the SEC. And so I had to do all these things to make sure that when the opportunity presented itself, I presented myself in the best light, as the best applicant. And in this case, as the best athlete that they made a mistake and passed on. And so when I say I was a professional before I even got to the NFL, that's the major caveat of how I proved myself to be a professional. Now, it goes beyond that when I got to the University of Georgia, because I took extreme sacrifices in order to pursue this dream. When I say extreme, I got to the University of Georgia, got to this campus before classes even started, before any other recruit or any other freshman had gotten there. And I was putting in work a month beforehand. Again, carrying the same mindset that I had in high school when I got to know. I didn't let that halt me or deter me from my dream, to bringing that to the college level at this point, and working before every other person who they said was big enough, that was fast enough, that was strong enough, that was more attractive size-wise. before any of those people, any of those other, my, future teammates had gotten there. And what that resulted in is when they finally got there, they thought that I was already on scholarship because I carried myself in such a fashion, in such a manner that I looked like I belonged. I showed myself as a scholarship athlete, and that's what everyone thought. So we get to the season opener and we're playing Clemson, and I get to make the travel team as a walk-on. Didn't even have a number. At that time at the University of Georgia, walk-ons, like the lockers were divided by player numbers. And so if you weren't in that 1 to 99, all the walk-ons got above 99. And I don't know if there's ever been a 3-digit number in college football, but it wasn't at UGA. So my last name was Battle, and I believe I was player number 102 because I was, Battle, B last name, top of the alphabet. So I'm number 102, 103. I'm making this trip as a walk-on to open the season in Clemson, who was ranked top 10. They were supposed to just destroy us. And I ended up playing. Not only did I end up playing, I ended up making a trip as a walk-on in front of a lot of guys who had gotten scholarships, who were classified as better than me, right? Worthy of a scholarship. I got to play. I got to make the trip while they sat at home and watched the game on television. That's the type of determination and the grit that you have to carry yourself as a professional. And it didn't stop there. I did everything that I had to do in terms of grades and work ethic and putting in work ethic on the field and outside off the field, just making sure my body was in shape, all those things to take care of myself, to do the things that I needed to do to get to where I knew I wanted to be all the way from 7 years old. And ended up going as a undrafted free agent for the San Diego Chargers. I don't know why they moved the team to LA, but for the San Diego Chargers, and ended up playing 6 years of professional football. And to hear me say that right now is just a testament to not giving up and not letting bad news like block your momentum. And so that's something I'm extremely proud of, to be able to play 6 years of professional football when honestly everyone said that I wouldn't be good enough to do it. And so in retirement, I wanted to go to medical school. And so in order to do so, it had been almost, a decade since I had taken all of the courses that I was supposed to take in order to apply to medical school. So I started from the beginning. I started all the way over. When I retired, went back to school, started taking my freshman chemistries and classes over again, just to prepare myself and put myself in the position that I could be the best applicant possible. And that went on for about 8 years. But here's the thing. When I made that decision, I remember seeing on the campus newspaper, we call it the Red and Black. I remember seeing on the campus newspaper, it said, the headlines were, first time in UGA history, average entrance GPA for the freshman class is a 4.0. And I'm thinking to myself, these are the students that I'm going to have to compete against in order to get into medical school. And I just see my entire career as a freshman at UGA to being undrafted, a walk-on freshman at UGA, to being an undrafted free agent in the NFL. Now I have to compete against whiz kids. I'm assuming like I'm going to have to go against Doogie Howser or something like that, dating myself again. So what I had to do was figure out a way to put myself in front of and give myself more experience than those students who would be applying alongside me. And I made a decision to work in a hospital. I mean, if I want to be a doctor, the best place to train and learn how to be a doctor without actually being a doctor is in the hospital. And so I ended up working in the OR at Piedmont Hospital for roughly 8 years. And so I made the sacrifice to go to school in the morning and early afternoon, and I will work in the hospital almost every evening. Now, I don't even know how I made it. I don't know when I slept, how I slept. I don't even know how I was passing classes. It's all 8 years of a blur. But again, I put those same practices in place that allow me to become a starter at the University of Georgia, All-SEC player, All-American player, to play 6 years of professional football, starting as an undrafted free agent, and now going from someone who has to compete against kids who are probably 10 times as smart as me, but I still had to put those strategies in place to make myself a better candidate for the medical schools in which I was going to apply. And so in synopsis, everything that I've told you along my journey, along my way about being a professional is something that I don't just say. It's something that I have lived daily. And those still things that I implement into my life as a husband, as a father, as a worker, whether it was being a professional in Chick-fil-A or being a professional working at a church, Victory Church. Those are all skill sets that I had to employ in order to see myself where I wanted to be, reconcile that to where I currently was, create a strategy to bridge that gap. And what I'm leaving out is finding people who could help me, pray with me, motivate me extrinsically, because I had a fierce internal or intrinsic motivation, but to corroborate and make sure and hold me accountable to what I was trying to achieve. And so when I say what it takes to be a pro, it takes all of that. And so to break it down, it first begins with, what's your vision? What's your vision for being a professional? Where is it that you see yourself? How is it that you see yourself, right? And then once you have that picture, once you know where you want to go, how do you become honest enough with yourself to say, all right, this is where I want to be, but this is where I currently am? And that has to be real honest. You have to have a real self-realization, like a true self-realization. And it's difficult sometimes, especially in this day and age, because it's so easy for us to put on a mask and to post something that displays not where we truly are, but where we want to be, even though we haven't gotten there yet. And so it takes some courage and it takes some real honesty with yourself to say, all right, that's where I want to be, but this is where I really am. And it's okay in this season, because I know that I'm going to, step 3, strategize to bridge that gap from where I am now to where I want to be, right? And then implementing that plan, implementing that strategy, actually living it out, staying consistent to it, staying true to it. And then the last step is finding people who can support you as you go on this journey. So in a nutshell, that's what it takes to be a pro. And I'm going to open up the chat here to see if anyone wants to ask any questions, or if there is some like personal coaching advice. If you need help, planning out how to strategize and bridging that gap, let's do it. I'm gonna go to my producer and let her know if to place anything, because I think we're streaming on a couple of different channels. So if there is anything out there on socials, pop it into the chat feed. All right, here we go. So what skills can I enhance or develop in order to be more professional? That's an interesting question. So when it comes to knowing how to grow, you have to take inventory of where you currently are. And so there are several ways to help figure out or determine exactly where you are. So I have this saying that when we show up in a space, we show up how we perceive ourselves to show up. Now, how we perceive ourselves showing up can be completely different or slightly skewed from how other people see us when we show up in a space. For instance, I'm going to say an example. I say with my children, I could be in heavy thought or contemplation about something I'm strategizing for the business, something I'm strategizing for the nonprofit. And when I am focused on something, it's not easy for me to get distracted from it. I've always been just a laser focused type of person. And so what I see myself as being determined, but also attempting to multitask by somewhat listening to what one of my children is trying to say. That's how I see myself presenting myself. However, what they see is dad is more focused on whatever he's doing in his office, opposed to what I want to share with him or what I'm trying to say. Now, that is not my heart's intent, but people aren't really equipped to be able to read a heart's intent. They only see what they perceive. And so how I'm presenting myself is completely different than how my child is receiving me in that moment. And unless they let me know, unless they have this skill set to say, hey, dad, I'm really trying to talk to you, and I would appreciate it if you gave me your undivided attention. Now, I know that's mature because my children are older, but for parents who have younger children, it could be daddy, 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 daddy. Like once they get to the sixth time, you might want to shift your attention to what they're saying. And so I gave that example to say this. In order for you to know how you can better develop your skills on being professional, you need to take a self-inventory, but also have, I would say, a second party or even third party inventory. Going around to ask people, hey, I believe I present in this way, but how do you really see me? I believe that I'm great at communicating. It could be a coworker, right? It could be a family member. It could be a spouse. And if you really want to know, say, I want to be more professional. I want to grow my professionalism skill set. I believe that I'm a great communicator. I believe that I display great leadership, and I believe that I help motivate people. Are those three characteristics that you see in me in the workplace? Are those three characteristics that you see with me in our marriage? Are those three characteristics that you see with me in my parenting? And getting that feedback I guess it's really not a secret, because there is a multi-million, maybe even billion-dollar industry of evaluations. You can take the Enneagram. You can take all these different types of assessments or personality tests. And, Big Five is one that's free, but you can take Strength Finders, and you can pay a lot of money to take these personality tests to figure out, how you present or what your strengths or weaknesses are, or I won't even say weaknesses, what your strengths and areas of opportunity are. Or like one leader told me is, Trey, you don't lead by giving your employees personality tests. You lead by darkening the doorway. And what that means is, if you want to know how a person work relationships are and how they act in work relationships or in a professional setting, darken their doorway, go to their office, go to their cubicle, go to their desk, and have those life conversations with them. The best judge of knowing where someone's strengths or rooms for opportunity are in terms of professionalism is assessing it yourself. And so my advice to you is, get people who can give you honest advice and open advice, and won't feel that there's fear of retaliation if they're open and honest with you to answer that question. And before you ask anyone, take what you know, like what you think of yourself in that sense now, and see how that correlates or matches with what the person is telling you. All right, next question is, what happens when you think you've crushed it, done all you can to control, and still get rejected? That's an excellent question, because that's honestly how I felt in my football career. I always thought that I crushed it. I always thought that I put enough energy out on the field to bolster my resume, my athletic resume, in a way that people would want to give me a scholarship. Obviously, it didn't happen. So here's what I say to that situation. If you think you've crushed it, there's obviously things that you've prepared, that you've presented, that you've thought about. Gave heavy contemplation in presenting this project, whatever it is, whatever that project is, whatever you feel that you've crushed. There was a lot of equity that you've built up in creating whatever it is. Now, if you think it's a perfect project, right, but whoever you're presenting it to sees some holes, that doesn't mean it's a complete failure. And you should never see a setback as a complete failure. So what I would suggest is, I was just reading a book. It was called actually Necessary Endings. And he was talking about leaders who need to break things off, right? But after breaking things off, or after ending an agreement or a relationship or terminating someone, it's important to audit, right? Take an inventory of the things that they did well while they were working with you, right? So whatever this project is that you've worked on that you thought you've crushed, it's very important to not just move on and have hurt feelings and feel like you're a failure at the end of it. It's important to audit, to take inventory of the things that they may have liked about the project. What were the skill sets that led up to you presenting this it? Take an inventory of those things. Those are like building your resilience reservoir, like your resilience resume of sorts. So take an inventory of the things that they think you did well and the things that you know you did well. Maybe it was some skill sets that you had never displayed before, and you really put them on display on this particular project. Now, once you get what you've done well, right, then you get feedback on, okay, I thought I crushed this. Apparently, there is some discrepancy on what I thought and what you believe. So how do we reconcile that? So what could I have done to get better, right? What could I have done to make you believe that this project was crushed just like I thought it was crushed, right? And so you take the things that you did well, and it goes back to the last question, like, how can I grow in this area? So you take the things that you did well, right? You reapply it to the phase 2, right? Or beta, or whatever the initial was. Take the feedback that the upline or whomever has given you, right? And the advice that I gave on the last question is be open and willing to accept honest feedback. So once you're willing to hear that and you're not offended, like when you have offense, it's like putting earmuffs on. You're not going to hear anything. So am I able to receive advice, to receive feedback, not to be offended, and truly take those things as something that can help me grow? Something that can help me grow. So, I mean, you see it in gardening. Like before you even plant a seed, the first thing you have to do is mess up this perfectly flat ground and, dig out a space to plant the seed. You have to rough up the soil. And so that roughing, even though it's painful, even though it's disfigurating sometimes, it's what's necessary for growth. And so if you thought you crushed it, the consensus was it wasn't crushed. Take what you did well, combine it with the feedback that they give you, and you present an even better project the second time or the next go around. And what's interesting about that is the first attempt is what you believe was your best attempt because you thought you crushed it. So this was the best that I can do. But once you get that feedback and you present that second attempt, you will see that going back and working on the things that made that first project not crushing is beyond what you initially even thought that you could do on your own, right? And so there's beauty in that. There's beauty in that growth. There's beauty in that failure. And that beauty is that the next iteration will be better and exceed what your initial inclinations were on the first attempt. That's a great question. Thanks. Checking here. Any other question? I see here in the comments, ready, go, set. And I'm gonna reference my friend Alex here because he really changed my perspective on attempting to attack a project. And so when we think of ready, go, set is how he explained it. In the game of football, we have a cadence before the quarterback snaps the ball when the offense is on the field. And even when you're running a race, it's ready, set, go. But so frequently in many organizations and many startups and many businesses, even in our personal lives, anytime we're trying to achieve a goal or strategize, we kind of rush that strategy period. And so we put forth so much work to launch this product or to finalize this strategy. And we put so much work into it. And then sometimes we get restless and it's like, all right, I've done enough. Let me just launch. Let me launch it. And it's that set period that I don't think we give enough attention to. And Alex reminded me of this when he said ready, go, set. It should really be ready, set, go. But we get out of order so frequently and get into this ready, go. I mean, it should be ready, set, go. But so frequently we get out of order and we live out a ready, go, set type lifestyle, type mentality when we're trying to achieve something. A perfect example of this is this book that I'm currently writing, The Places I Call Home. Initially, I was going to self-publish. I was going to go through KDP, was going to go through Amazon, type up my manuscript, which I did, right? And it's actually a book series. So I typed up 5 separate manuscripts and I was going to contract out an illustrator, contract out an editor based off of what I had already written. And I was going to go to market. I was going to launch the book. I thought I was in the proper cadence, ready, set, go. But I ended up signing with a publisher. And if you saw my post, I believe it was yesterday, I am now on my 6th iteration or my 6th edition of that original manuscript. And I would have made the mistake as a self-publisher of going ready, go, set if I would have just published that book. It wouldn't have been the project or the product that I really wanted to present, right? It would have been like the question said, like when I thought I crushed it and I get the feedback, no, it's really not that good. We should work on this. That's literally what happened. And so I had to be humble, take the advice from someone who was more knowledgeable than me and someone who had been in the industry and go through this process of writing another version of it, writing another version of it, writing another version of it, up to 6 times till finally they said, okay, now we can get illustrators involved. And so that is the quintessential example of ready, set, go versus ready, go, set. And a key element or key component of that is, like I answered those first 2 questions, who are you getting that advice from? Who are you referencing? Who are your mentors? Right? I once heard it said, if you're the smartest person in your circle, either your circle is too small or it's time to find another circle. And so whenever you're working on professionalism, whenever you are working on a project, anytime that you're trying to achieve something, you need to bring in wise counsel. Always bring in wise counsel, whether paid or free, or someone that you can trust, and make sure they're pointing you on the right path to ready, set, go, as opposed to ready, go, set, which is not good. All right. How do you handle imposter syndrome or self-doubt? So imposter syndrome, I'll put it like this. You are the only version of you. And if you're being true and real to yourself, there is no impersonation. It is truly who you are. Now, in terms of self-doubt, I think self-doubt is healthy to a degree. I remember my freshman year. Well, it really wasn't my freshman year. It was when I was taking my courses to apply to medical school, and I had to take a food and nutrition course. And Dr. Alex made this statement. First day of class, we had this book and we're ready to dive in. And he says, before we even open this book, before we start discussing anything about food, nutrition, micronutrients, macronutrients, vitamins, minerals, before we begin any of that, I want to make this statement. And he said that there are no good or bad foods. Anything that we consume is probably because we need it. The problem occurs when we consume too much and it brings an imbalance into our diet. And so when it comes to self-doubt, I would say self-doubt isn't a bad thing in moderation, because I believe that self-doubt begs you to question, begs you to wonder, begs you to have curiosity. And with self-doubt, it has to be at some point, if you can get out of it, right, at a healthy level, it has to be a point to where you reach out to seek counsel, you reach out to seek guidance, you reach out to get affirmation, right? Whether that affirmation is internal or external, that self-doubt breeds that questioning. If you are presenting a project or you're getting ready to try to achieve something or you're going towards a goal, right? If there's any point that there's self-doubt, that's why when I was talking about what it means to be a professional, it always involves community, someone else stepping in to tell you the truth. It has to be honest, because we don't want self-doubt to become self-destructive behavior. So it has to be honest advice, right? And that self-doubt can lead to you actually being open and available to receive that. So imposter syndrome, if you stand true to yourself and if you're honest to yourself, there's no way to be an imposter, because you're not emulating anyone, and you're the only you that will ever walk this earth, ever. And so if you're true to yourself, right, if you can define who you really are and walk that out, then there's no chance of you being an imposter. You're just being yourself. And in terms of self-doubt, let it come. Don't drown in it, right? But how do you use that as a medium to swim, right? To the point to where that self-doubt breeds a better version of you. to where that self-doubt allows you to dig in or to reach out to build something that you didn't think was possible because you doubted it in the first place. So ask those questions internally, externally. Let that doubt drive your purpose. It would only, when you think of it from a healthy perspective, that doubt will only drive and further cement your purpose and give you the empowerment to push on to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Great question. I think we have time for one more. Let me see. I'm checking something in the chat here. And so since we have time for one more, is there anything that's, less hypothetical and more practical, like a current situation that you are working through and like, you need some advice, but you may not have the budget to actually go out and get that advice? So any open projects, you don't have to worry about me signing an NDA or anything like that. I'm just here to support you as we open this session. Is we want to have a community, and the thing about community is I once heard it defined as family, friends, or any close individual that supports you when you need it most, right? And so in building and growing this connectivity in this community, is throw your thoughts out there. Throw your dreams out there. What are the things that you need advice on? Because if you saw anything from, I believe it was my post yesterday, that this journey, this thing that you call life, is a journey, right? And any journey is of epic proportion because you're learning so much along the way. Whether you think about it from a cinematic perspective or you think about it from a resilience perspective, right? Your journey is essentially your story. And that means that your life is a tale waiting to be told, or a tale waiting to be written. And if there's anything that I can do to help support, those words getting on that page, right? That video being recorded, I'll say it like this: whatever your journey is, I call it your testimony. You never know if your testimony can be the fuel for someone's breakthrough, right? So tell it, share it, and we'll go through it together here. I'm going to restate that. Your testimony is the empowerment to someone else's triumph. I like that. Since it's Think Tank Thursday, let's keep in the family of the T's. Your testimony is the motivation someone needs to reach their triumph. All right. Doesn't look like any other questions are coming through. So with that, I'll just say, I appreciate you guys jumping on tonight. The fact still remains, and I'm going to continue to reiterate it. We'll be on next month for Think Tank Thursday Live, and I'm going to continue to reiterate it. The purpose of this: community and connectivity. So the things that I post daily, the things that you are reading, the things that are inspiring you, it's not meant to be kept to yourself. If we think about the most epic things that have ever occurred, historically, it was passed down through story. And so I want to make this a platform for stories to be told, for stories to be celebrated, for connections to happen, and for community to be found. And I'm going to continue to champion this because I know firsthand the benefit of it and the strength and the weight of it. And I understand the promise of it because I'm living out that promise now because of the connection and community that I have lived out real time. So I appreciate your time tonight. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow for everything that we're posting. Be on the lookout as I reference the upcoming book. I'll keep giving updates on that, the places I call home. And hopefully by next Think Tank Thursday Live, there are some other updates that I can give on some projects that we're currently working on. And I don't want to spoil it, nor that I want to spill the beans just yet. So make sure you check out, log in and for the live stream and all the other posts that we're posting. So I appreciate you. Welcome to the community, and let's keep it growing and flourishing. All right. I'll see you guys next live.